Mr. Sheldon Gomberg. How the devil are you?
Well, I'm doing devilly good. How are you?
Good, good, good.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's been a long time. It's been since, I mean, this is probably a weird way of phrasing it, but it's probably been since Paul Warren Zevon died.
Was it really before he died? Because that was 2001 or 3.
Was it really that long ago?
Yeah, we were supposed to go out on the tour, the last tour, and it got canceled at the last minute. And he went up to Canada. He did 2 shows with Matt, who was the guitar player, Matt Cartsonis. And that's when he was saying he was having trouble breathing. And Matt was kidding him and going, yeah, you know, everything's fine. But then he came back and went to his dentist because he didn't go to the doctor. And his dentist sent him, he shut the door and said, yeah, sit down.
I felt like I could be wrong, and this is probably a little dramatic for the beginning of an interview, but it is what it is. I could be wrong, but I think we knew he was ill when he was doing those shows. Was it the last like LA shows he was doing?
He didn't know it until the very end. He did those Canada shows. I mean, as far as I know, I didn't know he had cancer. He went up and did those Canada shows, and then he called me shortly afterwards and said, you know, just wanted to thank you for blah, 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 and all that stuff. And I asked him what's up, and he told me he had just gotten that diagnosis. And then he still lived for about a year after that. So I think that was the first time he found out, because he wouldn't go to the doctor.
Yeah, I remember. Did you end up playing on the album that Jordan put together, his son?
No, I played on the one before that. I played on My Ride Is Here. The band that was touring, he called us in each to play on like 2 songs or something like that. And I don't think the other guys actually made it, but I went in and played 2 songs. And he called me like the next day and he goes, well, I got good news and I got bad news. And I said, well, what's the good news? And he goes, everybody loved what you played and makes the record sound better. I was like, what's the bad news? And he's like, now you have to play on the whole record.
Oh, that sounds like good news and good news to me, but hey, I had a great time with you all. That was a lot of fun. But here you are. You're in your studio, the Carriage House in sunny Los Angeles.
Most of the time.
And you've gone from being a session bass player, touring bass player, and I presume all during that period you were probably still recording and producing and engineering anyway, weren't you?
No, I actually built the studio because when we did Warren's record, he did it in his apartment on Sweetser, and he was kind of complaining that there wasn't enough money or whatever, and so I was going to build the studio anyway, just to have fun, producing, but not taking it seriously. But part of the impetus was to have a studio that we could do the next record and have a real studio.
Is that an MCI console?
No, it's a Quad 8.
When I first moved to Los Angeles, Quad 8 was a name I'd never heard. But there was a lot of studios I went and did work in, and Quad 8s were in them. Very underrated consols, to say the least.
Fantastic. I love them.
Was that the first console you put in situ in your studio?
Well, you know what? You came and played with us at Rob Brill's place, and he had a Quad 8 Pacifica, and that was where I found out about them. And then I found a Coronado in Australia with only 24 of the 36 channels, and because they would come that way. They would come 24, 28, 32, 36, I guess. You could get them that way. Mostly they're 36. But yeah. I found one with 24, and I was starting to rebuild it, and somebody, I think Brian Kehoe actually said, hey, I know you have one, but here's another one in Georgia that has 36. And so I bought it and sold the other one. I had that for years, and then my friend who fixes my console, whenever there's a problem, he had this one since the 80s. So he had it for like 30 years, and he had stripped it and dipped it, and he did a couple of mods on the EQs and on the center section and I'm not usually a mod guy. I like stuff original. And so I went back and forth on it, but the EQ thing kind of did it for me. And I also thought he hates to work on stuff, and it's hard to get him to do it. But if it's his, he's got to take care of it. That's the way his mind works.
Now, for a Quad 8, not being very experienced on myself, what characteristics would you assign to a Quad 8? What's the sound for you?
I'm a bass player, so I'm not very technical, but they're really clean, but not boring clean. They've got, I don't know if it's personality, but they're just pure and fantastic. I've got Neves over here, and we usually use the Neves sometimes for vocals and usually for kick and snare and stuff like that. But and I've got some APIs which I hardly ever use, and some of the friend that I got these from makes these. Well, he made the Ventura by A Designs, and he also made some of his own pre's, which are really fantastic. CRS Industries 2412s. I've got a bunch of those, but I rarely go to outboard stuff. The console sounds fantastic.
I'm sort of checking out on my little screen here what's going on in the background. What is that to the left with the two VU meters?
Oh, a Fairchild.
It is a Fairchild. From here, the lighting makes it look silver.
Well, it's like bronze or silver kind of thing. It's what happened, what I found out, I read an article that Fletcher had written, and the original 50 or so, the paint that they used would fade from the lighting. So if you pull off the knobs, it's still got the black paint underneath. But they kind of went to the alloy, to the metal. And at first I was like, I really want a black one, but I really love it now. I've gotten used to it and I really like it.
What are you working on? What have you been doing the last 20 years since playing with Warren?
I've done a bunch of records with Ben Harper, probably maybe worked on 5 or 6 with him, probably 6. And did the Ben Harper, Charlie Musselwhite record, and done a couple of Ricky Lee Jones records, and Peter Case, and Peter Himmelman, a bunch of stuff like that, and Eleni Mandel. And another thing that I do, which is something that I'm doing right now, a few of them. I don't know the backstory, so I'll just put it out there so that people aren't confused about it. But I have MS, and so that's why I don't play anymore. I started having trouble walking in around 2007 or so, and Sweet Relief helped me put an elevator to get into my house with a scooter because I couldn't walk up the stairs anymore. I am not comfortable with getting gifts, so I offered to repay them because they started in 93 and 95. Well, in 93, Victoria Williams had gotten diagnosed with MS, and she had to leave the Neil Young tour. And everybody, I can't remember exactly, there were 2 records that came out in 93 and 95. People like Pearl Jam and Lucinda Williams and Lou Reed and a bunch of people did her songs, and it made so much money, more than she needed, so she decided to start a charity to help other people. And then they did the Vic Chestnut record in 95, and they hadn't done any records since then, and this was like 2008 maybe that they helped me, and I just said, why don't I do a record, get that back on the tracks and to help repay you guys. And so I did that one, and it was so much fun, and it felt so good to give back to them and to give back to the music community that supported me all these years. I've probably done like 8 of them now or something like that. And so I've got about 3 or 4 going right now. We've got a Lowell George tribute record coming out next month on the 17th. And then Don Heffington, you knew Don, right? Yeah, he died a few years ago. He asked me if I would do a tribute one, because he, not only was he one of the most fantastic drummers, he was also a singer-songwriter. And so I started doing the record for him, and then Sebastian Steinberg played bass with him, and he was doing so much to help, and I was just like, you're producing it with me. And so we've got Jackson Browne and Fiona Apple and John C. Reilly, and there are like 20 artists on the record, and that's going to be coming out in like September. So, and then I'm just plugging away. I've started a few different ones. I'm doing an Allman Brothers one now, and so I just keep doing those because they're fun.
You are, I'm still going to say an incredible musician, and you were playing with, no less than Warren Zevon. It's firmly in that world, and it sounds like everything you're working on resonates in the same way. Lots of incredible musicians, and so do you feel your job as a producer and engineer is really to get the best tone possible and make sure that you're capturing the best performances?
The goal is definitely to get the best everything possible, sounds, performances, provide the right vibe for everybody to feel free to, let go and not be like coming in to do an LA session where you have to do, here's your part and blah, blah, blah. I like people to work together, and, I'm not play this exact part, I'll correct it if it's not right and stuff. And I kind of like to let people go where they go first, and then if there's a problem, I'll steer it. But I'm not dictatorial otherwise.
How did you first start working with Ben?
I was working on a Ricky Lee Jones record, and I was getting along great with the manager, talking to him on the phone all the time. So he also managed Joseph Arthur. On one call, he said, "Hey, I'm coming through town with Joseph, and I want to stop in and, show Joseph, introduce Joseph to you and, show him the studio and all that stuff." And they said, "Okay, we have this idea, or we have this plan in a couple of days. I can't tell you what it is, but we'll get you back to you and let you know if, we're going to make this record." And they called me back a couple of days later and said, "So Joseph and Ben are going to do a record together." And I was like, "Great." And then the day that we showed up to do it, Ben texted Joseph and said, "Do you know Danny Harrison?" And Joseph texted back and said, "Why? Is he in our band?" And he said, and so Danny showed up thinking he was going to be playing some guitar players. And in 3 days, they wrote and recorded like 9 songs. It was crazy. Oh, wow. And we just, and it was just, Ben and I just kind of vibed, and we all did. But Ben and I, he just called back and wanted to come back in and started there. And I've done a bunch of records with Joseph here too. God, how many? Like 3 or something like that.
It sounds like you're perennially busy.
15, 20 years. It was like, or 15 years or more. It was 7 days a week, 12 to 14 hours a day.
Give us a little insight, because you've got Fairchild, some beautiful pianos and a great console. I'm thinking you might have a nice bike collection there. If you don't mind me asking, do you have what you would consider to be a flagship vocal mic? Is there one your go-to, as it were?
Yes, depending on the situation. Usually a 47. We were just using a C12 on a record that we were just working on that sounded fantastic. Obviously 251s are fantastic too, but I'm usually going with a 47. If it's live with the band, quite often sometimes I'll use a 47 or 67. Or I love ribbon mics, so like a 77 is a great vocal mic. But sometimes I'll use an SM7 if I need the rejection,
Speaking of an SM7, do you have many situations where you're tracking everything live, including
vocals? Always.
Ah, nice.
My favorite way. We've all done them every way. We've done them where you start with the vocal and then build everything around, or the vocal guitar and then build everything around. My favorite way is if the band's all playing together. You can add overdubs on top of that, but if everybody's playing together, they react to each other, and it's just greater than each individual part. And then I don't know if you've noticed this, but you can be tracking live, and then when somebody goes back to replace something, if they go back and go, "Oh, I want to fix this part," okay, well then it takes forever to fix it for some reason, maybe because they're concentrating on it or nervous. But when everybody's playing together, and even the mistakes, if they're good mistakes or if the people are good, then I'd prefer that all the time.
I still think that's the best sounding records were all recorded like that. So 100% behind you. I did find that, when I was working on records, especially, when I was getting hired to do a single or an additional track for the record or something like that, I was having to play that game if something was very contemporary and they were recording things individually and editing them. Like, how do I get a bit of what they have and a bit of what I love, which is always kind of the game. But it sounds like to me, you're in a very, beautiful place where you're working with real musicians and you're capturing great performances from them.
That's the way I like, and I'm lucky that I know most of the great players in town, and I used to play with them all. So it's, they're friends, and it's always a good vibe here, and the live room especially just sounds fantastic. My favorite compliment that I've gotten from the live room was from a drummer. He was playing and he goes, "This room gives you back what you give it." And that I know that sounds stupid, but it just, what else could you ask for?
As a musician, not just a producer, that makes absolutely perfect sense to me. My guess is it's quite a warm sounding room then. It's not like overly ambient and bright.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's always the satisfying thing when you get one of those kind of rooms where everything just feels really kind of like enveloping. Yeah.
It's got all kinds of old soft wood, the carpet and soft wood and stuff. So it's not like too reflective, but it's not dead either.
I was going to ask you a little bit about, of course, the album Get Up, because you won a Grammy for it, which is absolutely amazing. That was the Ben Harper with Charlie Musselwhite album, of course.
Other than the Fistful of Mercy, which was the Joseph Arthur, Danny Harrison, and Ben record, then the first record we did was the Get Up record. He called up and wanted a couple months with me, and we recorded a few of his songs, and then he goes, okay, I got something coming in next week. We're going to do this thing next week. And we just kind of took a left turn, and we set up live. We did everything live in the same room. We did overdub vocals, but we did everything live in the same room. And, then he told me what it was, and it was like, so that was really, really, really fun. Oh, a couple of those songs that we cut before that we had cut before we did the Charlie record, Ben and Charlie record. I loved them. I fell in love with them. And I for years, I kept bugging Ben. I'm like, I don't want to bug you. I don't want to push you. But these songs you have to put out. And those kind of kickstarted the Bloodline maintenance. He finally goes, okay, let's do it. And so those finally all came out.
I was going through your credits as well, and I couldn't help but notice you have a Chris Spedding credit, which...
Yeah, I used to play with him.
That is so fantastic. I don't know if I knew that because, of course, I think a lot of the American audience might not know who Chris Spedding is, but he is a legendary guitar player.
Yes. So he was, when I was a kid, I was into all kinds of different music, but one of the things that I was really into was, I hate using the word punk because it describes things that I'm not crazy about, but the New York Dolls and the Stooges and, and then whatever Roxy Music would fall into and all that kind of stuff. And somehow through all those, I was a fan of Chris Spedding's. And I remember he came to town with Brian Ferry, Phil Manzanera and Chris Spedding were both playing. And I saw them in Seattle, and then I hitchhiked to Portland to see them because they were playing the Dollar concert thing. And so I hitchhiked down to see him. I think I met him in the hotel room. I was a teenager, and so I've always been a big fan of Chris's. And one day here in Los Angeles, a friend of mine called me up. A friend of mine, Mark Singer, he called me up and he said, "Do you know who Chris Spedding is?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding?" And he goes, "Well, I'm wondering if you can get him some work." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Are you kidding?" And he goes, "Yeah, can he? Can you give him, can you talk to him? Will you talk to him? Can I give him your number or whatever?" I was like, "Sure." And I thought, yeah, right. That's not going to happen. And I went out and I came back and there was a message on the machine from Chris. So I called Chris and I was talking to him and I'm like, "Well, I don't know. It'd be great to meet her or whatever. Why don't I'm playing on this blues jam thing, hosting a blues jam or whatever with this great guitar player, Stevie Gurr. Why don't you just come out and, hang out, and if you want to play, whatever." And so when I got to the club, he was there before we were to set up. He was sitting there, waiting. I'm like, wow. So I went over and talked to him for a while, and then it was time to get up and play. And they go, "All right, I got to go. We're going to play." And I go, "If you want to sit in with us anytime, just come up." And he's like, "Nah, I'm just going to listen to a couple of songs. And no, I'm going to take off." And we played one song, and he came up and played with us the whole night. And it was so awesome because I had Chris on one side and Stevie on the other side. And it was like having headphones on, like those Odysseys. It was like having headphones on with two great guitar players in each ear, both listening to each other. It was phenomenal. It was the most exciting night. And then we were playing at this place out in the valley called Cozy's. So he used to come out and sit in with us. And then he asked me to play in his band and help him put a band together and all that stuff. So we did a few shows, and I think I recorded with him maybe Joey Ramone tribute that Wayne Kramer was putting together.
I think that's the credit I read. Yeah, it was definitely with Wayne Kramer. Yeah,
and then Wayne was in here, sitting right here with that red, white, and blue Strat. I don't go into the fan type of thing one time, but I mean I was a huge MC5 fan growing up, and so I asked him, will you sign my Kick Out the Jams Motherfuckers record? I usually wouldn't do that, but I had to. And he was very kind.
So Kevin is your engineer, your assistant engineer, you're both?
Kevin works with Jackson Browne.
Never heard of him.
And he had actually come over here. When I had this new rack made, I gave my old rack away to Steve McCormick, and Kevin came up with Steve to help him move it. And so we met first there. And then when I was doing one of the Sweet Relief records, Mose Allison tribute, we cut Jackson's song at the studio. And so I worked with Kevin there, and then I called him and said, the guy that I was working with regularly was busy or leaving or something. So I called and said, do you ever do outside work? And he said, yeah. And so we've been working together for 5 years.
Yeah, I think 8 years now.
8 years. Yeah. I lose track of time. I'm really bad with time. I mean, not like it's 6 o'clock. I mean, years. So he's been helping me. And for years I had, because as I started not being able to stand up, I couldn't set up mic stands anymore and stuff like that. So I've always had assistants that would set up that, that stuff for me. And now, as of last year, the beginning of last year, my hands have gotten so bad I can't really, sometimes I'll click on the mouse and my finger won't let go, so I'll just drag everything across and mess up the whole session. So Kevin has now become the guy here. And then when it comes to mixing, we'll mix together. Kevin will be driving and I'll be sitting here with my Odysseys on and listening and making the comments and yelling at him and stuff like that.
I've actually found that I've got some of my best results. I learned that with Jack Douglas, because he would sort of produce the mix. So I'd be mixing, I'd be pulling up stuff and doing the usual sort of generic EQs, cutting some low mids on the kick, putting a little bit of snap to it, bit of low end, do all the things that we all do by rote, we're so used to doing them. And Jack would give me like, you need to compress that more. You need to do this. You need to do that. And some of my best mixes are in that kind of environment where you have two sets of ears working together.
Yeah, it's great for me because, first of all, I mean, the most difficult part was to be able to lose the ability to play bass anymore. That was the bass and guitar. That was the hardest thing to deal with because that's who I've always considered myself to be, a musician, a bass player. But then when I lost the ability to set up mics and do all that stuff, then it was hard to go, okay, I got to get someone else to do it. And I started having to hire assistants and then it got to the point where patching and stuff became too much. And so, but now to get the engineering pulled away, that was kind of hard to deal with. But luckily I have a bunch of people that I work with and they're all great people. But Kevin and I just have this thing together and he's got great ears and I trust him and he's a really nice guy. And so it was easy to go, okay, it's your turn. You do this now. I'm out of here. And when it comes to mixing, he's really open to it. It's hard to sit there and tell people, do this, do that. And I don't do a whole lot of it, do I? I don't step on your toes, do I?
No.
Okay. Wait, you're supposed to say yes.
I'm just saying.
And so it allows me to actually stay in the game. And soon enough, I'm going to step aside and just, maybe I'll just not even be here and let him do it, Because I trust him. Yeah. I thought I trusted him, and maybe I don't now. Okay, let's start with the compressors. So over here, the top one over here is a Collins 26U-1, which they're old tube compressors. They're great. I don't like, if you hit them too hard, they're for soft compressing. If you hit them too hard, they shut down in a weird way, but they fatten everything up. So just use them lightly. They sound great. Obviously 1176s, everybody knows what those are. Got your LA3s, which we don't use that much here. Do we ever use those?
Sometimes on guitar.
But very rarely. We have the 160 VUs, which we right now have on kick, the kick in mic and the snare mic. And 160Xs, I love those compressors. They're really cheap. I've had one since the 80s probably, and they're kind of transparent, and you can use them on, I use them on guitars, acoustic, electric. I've used them on kick and snare. So they're good to have here if you run out of other stuff, especially. But then we have, Kevin, why don't you take the center rack?
Cool. This is like an SSL style compressor, an Allen Smart. It's great we've used it on piano or the mix bus or overhead sometimes. This is a Neve 2254. This is like a slower Neve style compressor. It's really
mushy,
gushy, and
nice.
Mushy, and
it's great.
It's cool for rooms or piano or
And you can use it on the two bus too if you're looking for that kind of thing.
Sure. Then a couple of LA two-ways. These are right now, we were using one most recently on a vocal. They can be on guitars or just about anything. They've been in studios for over 50 years and they're still in here for a reason.
Drum roll, please, for my favorite compressor. Take it away, Kevin.
The BA6A, the RCA BA6A. And there's two of them here, and these are really, really great tube compressors. They're, you can hit them really hard and it still sounds amazing. It doesn't really sound like it's compressing. It just kind of keeps everything really nice and tight. They're great on vocals. They're phenomenal on bass. They're good on...
They're great on guitars, acoustic guitars especially.
Yeah. Yeah, they sound really great. They have a nice tube warmth to them, and similar to like a Fairchild style compressor, or, you know, or these big tube compressors. They're great sounding compressors though. Oh, there's another one of the Collins compressors that Sheldon was just talking about. And then a pair of distressors, which right now we're using on the drum rooms out there. These are awesome. It's nice to have a stereo pair of them to do fast stuff. 4 1073s. So 2 stereo pairs that are racked in these boutique audio things. Right now, these are going into a kick in and a kick out mic. And then the ones underneath are going into the overheads for the drums.
These are a friend of mine, Carl Johnson, who designed the A-Designs Ventura. He makes these. There's also a 4-channel version up here, a DM4412, but he makes the DM2412, which is, I mean, he would probably kick me for describing it this way, but it's kind of like the Quad 8 on steroids. It's really, really fantastic. They're clean, but not boring, you know, and we'll use those for overheads and stuff like that. Right now we're using the Neves, but and you can use them for vocals, guitars, anything. They just sound really great.
How do you decide between those and like which one you want to use between the Neves and those? Like, do you just kind of randomly just flop one on, or do you know?
Well, yeah, if I'm looking for that particular sound, then yes. But a lot of times it's like I'm using the Quad 8 anyway. And if the Neves are taken up, then that might be the next go-to. Not that they're not as good, but they're great. They're just different. You know, they're not really out there. They're not promoted well. They're not. I don't even know I don't think he's making them anymore. I think I just bought the last one from him, but I've got 4. There's actually another one. You moved it or something? The other one?
It's in the...
Yeah, I just bought another one of him because he's using these new transformers and giving the other one to Kevin.
Nice.
I give him all the trash. No, they're really great. And then we've got some Lang what are they? PEQ2s? PEQ2s. And there's a Pultec EQP 1A3. And then upstairs, what do we got, Kevin? We got the API pre's and API EQ. What is the 512? There's one of the AEA mic pre's, you know, for ribbon mics. Got a Neve.
33609.
Yeah. And the GML EQ, which is really nice and clean and really great. And then over here we have all the A-Design Venturas, which they don't make anymore. And then there's not prototype, but the very first run was called JM 3001. And then, like I said, his DM4412s, which is the 4-channel version, and it uses, I think it's different transformers, or op-amp, I'm not sure. I think it's transformers. And like these, only different. What else we got, Kevin? Oh, we got the Altec 436C, which we use to smash things with.
There's more stuff over here. There's these overstayers.
Oh, those are fantastic. Mm-hmm. Just alter the sound, you know, and you can really mangle things, and great for kind of smashing the room if you want to do that. Or, I mean, It's the modular channel.
It's just like there's a whole lot of different options that you can do with it. You can feed it in all sorts of ways, all different kinds of equalization and compression that you can add that has drive, and add all different sorts of harmonics and manipulate the sound in all different sorts of way, and high pass and low pass. And it's a really complicated unit. This is a stereo version of it too. So you can do all kinds of interesting gain staging of harmonics and compression, and it's cool. It takes some time to dial in, but you can get some really unique sounds that I've only heard through something like this.
What are you normally putting through it?
We'll use it a lot on rooms, but I've tried it on vocals and
You did it on bass on that last Ben record too.
and it's fantastic. You could use it on anything, just if you want to change up your sounds. And we tend to use it mostly on the room or something like that, but they're really great.
And then this is a compressor, the EMI TG12413 Chandler, yeah. It's cool. That's a great compressor too.
We haven't been using that much. It's newer to this place, but and then I have the
Compacts?
which only used it a couple times, and then something blew up, so I've gotten it fixed, but we haven't really used it since then. They're great.
Yeah. Eventide H3000 harmonizer down here. An AMS reverb. What is this? The RM6.
16.
The RM16.
Those are great.
Lexicon Primetime.
Got both of them, the Primetime
2.
Yeah, and the one.
Yeah.
And then a Cooper Time Cube. Those are great. Which is, there's a box that has two coiled things like hoses, basically, but I think they're thinner. And so they delay different amounts, like I think it's 14 and 16 or 14 and 17 milliseconds. And like that Rufus, that Tell Me Something Good, I think that went through one of those, was what I was told. I wasn't there. But they're really great.
Do you find you're still using outboard effects, or you move more in the box for your effects?
When we mix with the console, but that doesn't happen as much anymore because everybody calls up a month later and wants to, turn something down or turn something up, and it's like, to do it through the console, you have to recall everything, and you're going to lose something else to try and get this little thing that they want, so it's just easier to open it. And Pro Tools is sounding pretty good now, so. But I love mixing through the console. So, for the normal Quad 8, they don't have these little switches. It's just, I think it's a wide Q on the EQ. And he put a switch in there to make it narrow, medium, or wide. And I like that a lot. Especially if you want to dip something out, you can make it narrow. Or so you can, that makes the EQ pretty cool. And then on the stereo bus here, he put an A and B bus. He split it so it's a stereo bus. So you have A and B, and so you can have all the band on A and all the effects on B, and you can fade the band out and leave the effects up, or you can do the opposite, So it's, again, we're not using it very much because we're not mixing through the console, but it's a really cool mod. Okay, as far as, we have this mic'd up right now with we just swapped out the kick. Usually we'll have the, if there's a hole in the head, we have either the D12 or an 868, EV868 inside. Sometimes an ATM 25, Audio-Technica, or even a D112. Here we have the D12 outside, and we also have a FET 47 outside, which is what we usually use on the outside of a kick. On the snare, we have 57 top, 57 bottom. Obviously, flip the phase for the bottom one. And then on the toms, good old 421s. We have a mono room mic over there. This is the 121 or 122 you have on that?
121.
121. And I was using 67s for a while, then we switched to Coles. Somebody used Coles here, and I liked them, so I just stayed with it. And then Kevin was just doing a record here. He was using 451s. And we're about to try out some Audio Technicas, 5045s. And we have the mic over the top of the kick drum. We call the crotch mic, and because it's pointed at the crotch. And it's an American D22, and we smash it through it. Altec 436C, smash the shit out of it, and then just kind of bring that in underneath to fill everything in. And then for the rooms, we have an SF12, Royer SF12. Royers are great mics. On the hat, I'm not usually a big hat fan, but we have a M160 on the hat for right now. Never found the perfect hat mic. Just not a hat mic fan. What can I say?
The one on the shell, how do you mix that in?
This one, the Royer?
The
Royer?
The Royer that's pointed at the shell, that kick.
That's, I think you have that going through the 1176, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like a close mono, I guess you'd call it a room mic, but it's a little closer than a room mic.
And then the angle of the overheads, is that, how do you measure that out? How do you have it, like, where you just know how you want to have it angled? Are you having like a certain way, like you want this one to be pointing in a certain area, or is it just thrown up?
Well, on the most recent session that we did, we put these up. We were having trouble with the crash cymbals being louder than the rest of the drum shells. So the Coles were kind of making the cymbals jump out for some reason. So we just opted to change up the mics. And then we put up these 451s, and we had them angled straight down originally. And then we were still having that same problem. I think it was just the drummer might have been hitting the cymbals a little bit too hard in comparison to how he's hitting the drums. So rather than have him focus in on that and change how his style playing is, we just moved the mics out, and they weren't facing the cymbals, and they're facing more of the drums, and that seemed to just fix the problem. So just moving the mics a little bit. It isn't normally something that I would do, but we just tried it, and then it fixed the problem, so we just stuck with it.
Nicely done. There's a 55 Deluxe. There's a 58 Harvard, 59 Tremolux, which I got when I was homeless. I got it for $75. Couldn't afford the guitar. He had a 61 Strat, white Strat for $225, and I was broke. So I couldn't buy it, but I bought the amp. And then there's a 63 or 4 Princeton over there. A couple of Gibson Skylarks, and a Magnetone Troubadour. Gibson Champ, Ampeg Reverber Rocket.
I mean, the Mutron Biphase, which is a really, really cool pedal.
Yeah, I always wanted one of those. My friend had one, the same guy that had the Fairchild that I told you about for $1,500. He had one, and I just didn't want to bug him about, would you sell it to me? And now they're much more expensive. I wish I had bugged him, but a couple of years ago, I just felt like it was time to get one. They're really great phasers. Not like we use phasers a whole lot here, but if you're going to use them, you could show them the, yeah, that's really cool. So there's a guy in Italy that used to work for Benson, and when they closed up, he bought all the parts. This is what I understand. He would be able to tell you better, but he bought all the parts so he could fix, the Bensons, and then he started making newer versions of the, of the Bensons that a little more sturdy and stuff. And I was going to buy an old one, and then I thought, well, half of them, they're not working, or you have to get them, stay on top of them. And these are brand new, and they sound fantastic.
So this is another room in the studio, like the keyboard room. Over here, there's a B3 organ.
It's actually a C3.
Oh, C3?
Because it's got the bigger cabinet.
Yeah, so this is a C3. And then over here we have a Wurlitzer. And then a Fender Rhodes. And then this, I'm not sure what this is. What's this, Sheldon? A Honar?
Oh, it's a pianette.
Pianette. Mm-hmm. And then there's some more guitars in here up in the wall. There's a 330 and a 335. And this small tenor. What kind of guitar is this, Sheldon?
It's a I think it's a Stella.
Cool. And then an old a Dan Electro baritone, and then a Danny 12-string. And then this is the piano that Sheldon was talking about, the Wing & Son. And I'm not a piano player, so I can't really demonstrate this to you very well, but there's 5 pedals here. And this one on the far left is the one that he was talking about that creates that marxophone. And then this one right here is the one that does the tack piano thing. Similar thing, just a little bit tighter. And then all the other standard pedals, you know, sustain and stuff. But those are the 2 pedals that he was talking about that have that really unique sound. And then he has these, the C414 EBs, the ones with the, what's the capsule in there?
CK12.
Yeah, the CK12 capsule. These sound great, and these kind of stay on this piano.
Yeah, those are one of my favorite mics.
Yeah, and we just put these bags over it to keep dust out of it. But yeah, it's a really unique sounding piano. A lot of people that come in here dig it. There's another ISO room back here with a bunch of snare drums.
A little pump organ too.
Yeah, there's a pump organ right here. This is the marxophone, so this is similar to what that is doing. Bunch of snare options in here. You can also put an amplifier in here to get more separation from the live room. And what covers it? Here's the Leslie all the time. Yeah, that C3 is hooked up to right here, and then we have a pair of 57s on the sides, and then
the 868's on the bottom, right?
Yeah, an 868 on the bottom. And put a pop filter in front of it to keep the wind out of this bottom drum. And yeah, that's everything in here.
So thank you, Sheldon. Thank you, Kevin, for taking us around. I really, really appreciate it. It's great to talk to you in person again after so many years. I know we've had a whole bunch of emails over the years, but this is like, it's the real deal. We're talking.
Deal. Yeah, thank you for making the time and doing it. It's fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to have a link down there where you can go to Sheldon's website and check out, check him out and check out everything he's done.
Look for the Chris Spedding credit.
And check out the Chris Spedding credit. Yeah. I don't think it gets much cooler than that. Yeah.
Not many people appreciate how cool he is. I've always thought he was really cool. So.
Well, in England, on the UK in general, he's a legend. He's on so many incredible records. I think he played with John Martin. Doesn't he play guitar on what he played on Solid Air? But he's definitely playing on some of my favorite albums ever.
Yeah.
Like many. Yeah. Marvelous. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Sheldon. Wonderful to talk to you.
You too.
So long. Farewell. Thank you.
Bye.
Auf Wiedersehen. Au revoir. Adios. Goodbye.